Welcome to the Legacy Leaders Podcast. Are you doing the best for your client to help them create their legacy? Are you creating a plan that goes far beyond finances to help people ensure that it becomes the driving force behind all decisions? On this podcast, hosts Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller will help you with growing your practice and your clients' peace of mind. Together, they bring the best and brightest minds to share with you how to help your clients develop their best legacy. And now, here are your hosts, Katie Beth and Stan.
You're listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. Our guest today is certified financial planner and the president and founder of Creekmur Wealth Advisors, John Creekmur. John, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to being here.
Absolutely. So before we dive right in, I was hoping you would tell our listeners just a little bit about your background and what really piqued your interest in financial planning.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that takes me way back, actually. I think I was maybe the only junior high kid way back in 7th and 8th grade that read the Wall Street Journal every day. And so always kind of had an interest in money and finances. And, you know, it's interesting. I actually got into a little bit of trouble back in high school. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that and had similar journeys. And one of the gentlemen that actually came and picked me up at the police station that night, he spent some time, hired me to take care of some rental properties, and just a strong leader of a man in our community. And he just challenged me. He said, "You know, John, you're a good guy that made some bad decisions. And with that, though, you have the ability to impact people for good. And I know that you love money and finances, and the world needs shepherds that can come alongside people." And so that encouragement as a 16-year-old really set me on a path of saying, hey, let's start going to school. Let's get some training. Let's get some background. So way back in 1987, I decided to pursue a degree in accounting and finance and had a double major, completed that, and started in 1991 on my journey as a financial planner, and went independent in 1995 and started really the roots of what we have today, Creekmur Wealth Advisors. And it's been a blessing to see the thousands of families all around the country and the world that we work with now. And, you know, we have locations, goodness gracious, in 5 or 6 locations around the country. And it's been a blessing to come alongside and see people's lives change forever in the work that we do.
That's fantastic. So talk to us a little bit about what your ideal client looks like and what unique tools and solutions and strategies you like to employ to really help your clients and get them set on the right track.
Yeah, it's so interesting. An ideal client profile is really where we start with every single conversation. And, you know, it's a much bigger than just the finances that people have. And obviously people come to a financial planner for a money reason. Maybe they're walking through a transition in life, or maybe they're looking at acquiring a new business, or they're needing some help as far as making business decisions or estate decisions or portfolio decisions, whatever it may be. And, you know, we believe that all people have big hopes and dreams and big goals. And most folks say, well, I don't really have anything big. I just want to do this, or my kids or my family is important to me, or our legacy is important to us. Well, that's big to them. And so we really look for people that are able to communicate and say what's important to them. It's something really, really big to them. And our job is to come alongside them, help them define that, and then really put into place different action steps that they need on both the protection side, the risk side, the portfolio side, and then the legacy side, really the tools that they need to be able to live out those incredible lives. And we kind of summarize it down, Katie, into the fact that we help good people make great decisions to live incredible lives. And we just come alongside them, and really we enjoy the journey. Our greatest joy in life is hearing their stories of the journey and kind of what's happening in the midst of it, but then also being able to experience it whenever they've accomplished those huge objectives. And so big picture, if someone's got a big hope or dream that they want to see accomplished, then we kind of come alongside them and just help them in that journey.
I love that. And I love what you boil it down to. That's great. Stan, I know you're full of questions for John. What do you have?
Oh, I have a bunch of questions. First, I just want to comment, you know, in looking at your website, I noticed that there are a fair number of people on your team, not all of them for sure, but a fair number of them have your last name.
whenever we try to recruit employees, it helps that they have a similar last name. And so, but there's not many Creekmurs out there. And so, but it's been a blessing. I've been able to work with my wife, Stacy. So we got married, goodness, now way back in 1991. And it's been a lot of fun. A lot of, as everyone knows, when you're in a marriage that long, there's a lot of steps in the journey, right? And we've had a lot of fun actually doing this together. And then we were blessed with our youngest son. Our oldest son actually finished his undergraduate work out in Denver, and he had a number of great offers out in Denver for positions. And he called me one day and said, "Hey, Dad, I'd love to come and talk with you about the family business." And it's kind of like, boy, that's a big conversation, because it's hard for businesses to transition to that second, third generation, quite honestly. And I just have worked with a lot of families that on the backside of that, where it didn't go well, both from a business standpoint and a relational standpoint. So, we just said, hey, we're not going to let that happen. And so we took a step back, and Stacy and I just had a really deep discussion about how can we grow our relationship personally with our marriage. How can we actually take the unique skills that we are both created with, quite honestly, and how can we actually have that work together? And then what are pitfalls along the way? And one of the key things we brought out of that is that we've got a phenomenal relationship as people, I guess, as a family together. We love being together and doing things. But when we're at work, we are professionals, and we all stay in our own lane. And so we talk about that a lot. And what does that mean? And so it's an actual process that we have to work through. Otherwise, it all kind of blows up, and is actually something that we spent time with our boys. Our youngest son actually, he actually just popped in my office and asked us the life question that we actually talk with their fiancés and the gals that they end up marrying, just about what it's like to work in a family business, and relationally, what are some of those pitfalls that people follow into, and how do we communicate through it? So it's been a blessing, Stan, and but it's not without pitfalls. It's not without actually having to work at our relationship to build that legacy. And we just said, hey guys, let's build a 100-year company, and let's have as much impact as the Lord allows us to have. And we're going to do it for a long time, longer than mom and dad are alive. And let's put the right principles in place along the way.
Well, John, you may want to think about creating a coaching program and offering that to the world, because I think I think you'd find there's a real demand for that. One of the things that we talked about before we, like when we spoke before we began recording this podcast, is something that you told me that really struck me as interesting. I know your office is there in Pekin, Illinois, but you told me that you were in the process of heading to see somebody to talk about buying their financial practice, and you made a comment about that really intrigued me, and I want to drill into that a little more deeply.
I'll tell you what, that's been an interesting journey. So way back, it would have been, oh goodness, 7 years ago. I was speaking at a conference actually about this very topic of the importance of having a personal life mission statement that you focus on, and that you build your everyday activity, which could be included in your practice. It would be in your business life. It would be in your family life and your spiritual life, but where everything centers around that, and that you actually build for significance in your daily work. And a fella came up and talked to me afterwards, and he was 79 years old, working as a financial planner. It was his second career. Had a very successful career, actually starting and running a life insurance company as a CEO. He retired to Denver, and then he decided he wanted to spend time working directly with people. And at that time, he was 79, and he said he wanted to really take some time to enjoy his golden years. And I kind of laughed and said, well, Jerry, you better hurry up, because you're kind of halfway through, buddy. And so we just got together, and we had some sandwiches and had some lunch, and him and his wife, Jewel, and we developed a relationship that I would say was built upon common principles of how we really respect and work with people. And so that was our first time we actually helped somebody actually transition into retirement. But I noticed that in doing that, it gave me such great joy in being able to help him accomplish his personal objectives, because we're all different. We all have different goal objectives, even as business owners, about how we want to transition and what's important to us. And he said his main objectives, there was two. He wanted to help his clients have a relationship with someone who really is a shepherd at heart and cared about them and their objectives. But he also wanted to make sure that Jewel, his wife, was taken care of. And I said, Jerry, I think we help you out in both of those. And so Jerry passed away 2 years after we accomplished that transaction. He actually set up a appointment for us with his hospice nurse from the hospital bed. And so he is always one of these guys. He called me from the ambulance. And he goes, I'm talking with the ambulance driver about how he needs to talk with you. And so just an interesting guy that I love dearly. But to talk to Jewel about every month now, she's 89 years old. But that started us down a path then of recognizing there's a lot of phenomenal financial advisors in this industry that work all over the country. They care about their clients. They care about really helping them make good decisions. They get to the point in their career because of health or because of just transition to that next stage. They're not quite sure what that looks like and what's the value of their business. How can they monetize that? Who can they work with? And, we just said, let's put a process in place to help people on that journey. So interesting, I had a conversation in the office with a fella and his wife from locally here yesterday. Have a phone call in about an hour with another gentleman in Colorado Springs, and we're heading out to Toledo, Ohio, first part of next week to meet with another person. And so, Stan, it's a message that I think resonates. There's a ton of financial advisors. Average age in the industry right now is 59 years of age with no succession plan in place.
Yeah, and what you're saying about financial advisors is generally true about small business owners more generally. People are a lot more adept, I think, at getting into business than they are at figuring out how to get out of it.
Well said. Well said. And we see that so clearly that a lot of folks get into business and some don't make it, obviously, but man, there's some that do a phenomenal job running it. And but how do you exit? That's a whole different conversation. And I think having someone come alongside, quite honestly, a guide, a Sherpa, if you will, somebody that has the ability and the experience to walk through it, has done it before. I know some folks that find that very useful.
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure that's true. Also, I want to just say that I did spend some time on your website, and I noticed that you guys use the phrase true wealth a lot throughout your website, and I get the sense that you actually are serious about that.
Yeah.
So I want you to talk a little bit about what true wealth is, and then I want you to talk about how you get clients to engage in the deeper conversations that do take them beyond just money and income, money, financial things. How do you get into those aspects of planning that are beyond the mere financial?
Yeah. It's so interesting. I'm going to say probably 15, 16 years ago, we were noticing that some clients, whenever we work with them, they would engage and they would kind of walk through action steps that we recommended, and then they would stick with the plan. And there are other clients that would not. Now, on paper, they may look very similar, similar asset level, similar income levels. They would have a lot of similarities, but there was something different. And so we spent a couple of years actually interviewing clients that were both executing well and those that were deviating off of plans and not executing, to really try to determine what was the core fundamental difference in those two groupings of people. What we found was the ones that executed well and stayed on path, they actually had a view of the world, they had a view of their role, and they were able to communicate clearly what has impacted them in life. Whereas the people that we noticed deviated off of the plans, even though they were wonderful people, they could not have an ability to rise above just the here and now, the dollars, their accounts. They couldn't rise above conversation of money and returns. And so we recognized there's something in that. I didn't know what it was, but there's something there. And I talked to one of our clients, one of our better clients that we had at the time, Brian. And Brian, wonderful man. Everyone loved Brian. He has an executive role at a Fortune 100 company, kind of a top of the board producer, phenomenal communicator. He and his wife, Stacy and I developed a real relationship with them. They're a decade older than us. And we spent a lot of time with them delving into their definitions of things, and they're working through things. And we were able to clearly figure out that they could say specifically what was most important to them in life and tell us why it was most important. And for them, they could actually bring it down to 3 things that all begin with the letter F. And so it was their faith, their family, and food. And I always laugh at the last one. And because the reason why I would all of a sudden, I said, what's up with food? So he had written a book about building relationships around small town pizza parlors, and sitting down. There's something about eating a pizza with someone and having a Coke that's just kind of unique. He also, I noticed in their charitable giving, that they did a lot of giving, both with New York City Relief, which has now changed its name, which would take food out to the homeless, not have homeless come to them. They gave a lot of food, a lot of dollars to a lot of soup kitchens, to a lot of community gardens, to a lot of international endeavors that focus on food. And so in talking with them about these 3 areas that we were able to identify, every single one of them was rooted or grounded in something that had an impact in their life that could have been hard to walk through, where someone came alongside them and had a huge impact in their life. So with them, we said, guys, if we were to define that, what's important to you is these 3 areas. Let's walk through the practical steps then of what you need to do personally in life, but then also financially, and then also from your legal documents and from your tax planning. What are the action steps that you need to do to be able to live it out? And then what would that bring to you? So we started down that path, and we actually set up family summits with their children, or their adult children. And we brought in some of their younger grandchildren. We walked through hearing from their kids and where there was transference of common values and where there was weakness in that. We talked about ways to transition that to the next generation. So now they have 9 grandchildren, and Brian is just finishing his last 2 children's cartoon books that talk about a character trait that he sees in that grandchild. And so then he has sprinkled scripture from the Bible throughout that. And so we were actually able to take them and take their finances and take their estate planning and take their tax planning and actually merge it all together with what's significant about them. And now we're seeing multi-generational conversation and impact, which is coming off of that process. So it really is not about wealth. It really is about the things that rise above money. It's about the things that make us truly wealthy. And that really has to do with what's significant to people individually.
That is great stuff and falls so much in line with our vision and what we do with our law firm and here with the podcast and with Legacy Leaders Network and the other ventures we have going on. You've alluded to it several times, but talk to us about your faith and how that impacts not only running a family business, but also how you interact with your clients and your goals for them.
Yeah, so I think faith is critical in all that we do. And the reality is we all have a basis or a foundation of all the decisions that we make. And oftentimes people like to base those decisions on things that are relative. And so we fall into relativism. And the reality is then that gives us a very shaky foundation for whenever things change. And so we need to base our decisions upon things that are absolute, things that we know are true. And for Stacy and I, we have based our faith just on our relationship with Jesus Christ. And so that's based upon scripture. It is based upon the words of Jesus as we see brought together in the Bible. And so for us, our faith is critical in everything that we do. Stacey and I were just talking this morning about kind of one of her mottos, which is a long, faithful journey of obedience. And she talks about that really just coming out of her own challenges and growing points of desiring to rebel and not be obedient, and where that has taken her. Well, then we took that just into our personal life and our relationship. And so how do we work together as a couple? Which a lot of people that we talk to, so we've done a lot of speaking on this in our industry, and people come up afterwards and are like, man, it'd be World War III if we worked together. And everyone's laughing and we're talking about it. And Stacy said, you know, if I was not a believer and had my faith in something foundational that I knew was absolute, that I knew if I did not follow the principles of that, it would turn out bad, then I don't think we could work together. And if with my role then as the leader of our organization, the visionary, in this case, the president of a large and growing organization, if I did not treat all of our workers that work with us, that we truly believe are internal stakeholders, we have a stakeholder in our success. If I did not treat them the way in which, you know, we see in Paul's writings in the New Testament about how we should work together, we see the book of Proverbs, how we should work together with everyone that works with us, well, then we would not be treating people well, and our principles would get shaky. And so we use our faith as the center of all of our decisions. When it comes to personal finances, I believe every individual is basing their life decisions upon whatever their foundation is. And so for some people, it comes from an absolute position. From others, it comes from more of a relative position. But for our clients in which we see joy in the journey, and we see their impact being bigger than in the moment, that really comes from, is based upon something which is foundational and firm. And so for us, we base that upon our faith, and our faith is in Jesus Christ for salvation. And that's where we base all of our decisions.
So that was a great answer. I'm going to take us and make a quick turn because I don't want to run out of time before I have the chance to ask you about a couple of other cool things that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to us a little bit about True Wealth Radio, the Financial Blueprint podcast, and the True Wealth video. Tell our listeners what those are, what they can expect from those things.
Yeah, so each one is a little bit different. I love communicating. I love telling stories. I love hearing stories from people. And so with everything that we do, that each has a different purpose and what we're trying to accumulate. So we're on the radio stations in a number of different markets, larger markets around the country. We have a number of folks that approach us about syndicating our show and taking it more on a national side. And our focus of the show really has to do on True Wealth Radio, more about financial planning. It really has to do with how do we go about making good decisions. Luann Fulmer, who's my co-host, been together about 8 years. And we have about 300 shows that are out there already. We have new content every week, which gets produced. And our focus on True Wealth Radio is really about taking practical things as the markets change, as the economy changes. How do we interpret that? We have a couple of other podcasts. The Financial Blueprint is one that you mentioned. We also have Deep Dive. And Deep Dive is a quick 10 to 12 minute. And if you go to our website at creekmurwealth.com, you can find it there, get subscribed to that. We actually send that out also in email format. And that is a short 10 to 12 minute. It's usually me and my oldest son, Drew. And on that one, we're taking a deep dive into the topic that our clients have brought up in the moment. And what I have found, if I have one client that asks a question, there's probably another 1,000 people with the exact same question. We go deep on that one and we keep it kind of light and funny, but we walk through it well. It's also a chance to see how a dad and a son work together. And so it's a good time. And then also we have a lot of other materials and outlets as far as solutions on our website that people can sign up for as far as to be able to interact with us in different ways.
So John, let me
Fantastic.
say, yeah, I was going to just jump in and say, I really like the metaphor you use about planning. This idea of it's like building a house, right? You got to
Yeah.
design it and then build it, then you've got to maintain it. It's really interesting. We've developed a not quite identical, but really, really similar metaphor. So obviously great minds, come from somewhere, right?
Oh, for sure. It's so interesting when we try to figure out how do we communicate things. We in States now we saved and saved to build our house. We bought some family farmland and put up our kind of the house we kind of were always wanting to build 12 years ago. It's right on the property where we actually homeschooled our boys for a number of years, and they would take their little compound bows. None of them are hunters, but they would take the little compound bows, walk across the muddy cornfield, and sit in this big tree. So we decided to build our house centered on that big tree as far as memories. And when we were building it, it's kind of like you have to have a foundation. Then you have to frame it up. Then you finish it with the nice things that you want that are important to you. And then at the end of the day, you have to build a fence around it to protect it. And I think whenever we look at the things we do in life, it's about building things up the exact same way. You start with the foundation, and then from there you build it the way you want it to be. You finish it up as far as all the things that look nice, the things that you want to be representative. But once you get done, the work's not done. You got to put the fence around it and finish it and make sure it's protected.
And maintain it.
Mm.
Maintain it. That's isn't that the missing piece, right? It's not once and done. It's a journey that never really ends.
Yeah, for sure. And so it's maintaining it, it's continually working on it. It's the same way in all of our lives. And I just really kind of briefly here, I had a medical scare back in March. I had a heart attack, which is crazy. I work out every day. I eat very clean, and as genetic condition. And and when I'm coming out of those things, you kind of start to question things, and you start to say, what do I need to work on? So speaking of maintaining, I actually have sat down now and I thought, with my day, what do I do with every moment of the day? And it got me to reflect to say, I have about 30 wasted minutes at the end of the day. Let's just call it a day sooner. And so now I'm getting up between 4:30 and 5 every morning. And what I'm doing in those 30 minutes, I've taken some principles from John Maxwell on how do I change my thinking and how do I think better. And so I'm actually going through and saying, let's now think intentionally for 30 minutes every morning about what is it in my life that's foundational that I need to work on, and what are the things we need to work on maintenance on, and what are the things we need to change. And it has got me to actually boil things down to 5 key areas. And for me, it's the process we walk with our clients through. It's how we walk with all the advisors we work with through. And it's the basics as far as on life and how we build out that full, holistic, foundationally healthy life. But Stan, you're so right. If I had not thought about maintenance on my life in this moment, I would have missed out on the blessing that I've kind of maybe reached as far as changing some behaviors that I had every day.
It's good stuff.
Let me say, I think just generally, I think the financial services industry has done a better job of communicating the importance of maintaining a financial plan than has been the case with the estate planning attorney community. A lot of clients still buy into this idea that they can go get their estate plan done, and it's a once and done thing, and it doesn't have to be looked at, for 15 or 20 years or ever, and it'll all work perfectly. And we know, right, that simply is not true. And so we have a long way, those of us that are estate planning attorneys have a long way to go to catch up with what you guys are doing and communicating that really critical idea to our clients.
Yeah. And I guess I'll tell you what, I think that, Stan, that is just so true in so many areas of life. We've seen it clearly, quite honestly, with so many folks in the estate planning area. They work with an attorney, and I don't know if I say work, they engage as far as a transaction with an attorney. It's a one-time transaction of documents, but then all of a sudden there's no follow-up. Life's changed, their perspective has changed, the financial world has changed, the tax world has changed. There are things that are most important to them. They should be growing as people. Those directions have changed as they've missed out on opportunities to really shape future legacy. as far as with old planning, strategy, old planning documents, so those need to be maintained on a regular basis.
Amen to that.
Okay, John, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like our listeners to know about?
I'll tell you, we've covered so much incredible stuff, and thank you so much for hosting me. I guess the first thing is, you guys, Stan and Katie Beth, you guys have impacted thousands of people all around from your podcast. It's just a blessing to see. So keep doing that. Keep asking the hard questions with your interviewees, and more impact comes from that. And I would say the key thing is, make sure your foundation is firm. And then from there, you can build an incredible house that's going to last for generations. What the impact is going to be there. Get a plan, work with great people, and start with the foundation first.
I think that's awesome. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. This has been the Legacy Leaders Podcast with your hosts, Stan Miller and Katie Beth Hand. For more information about John and the work that he does, visit creekmurwealth.com, and we'll link that in the show notes for you. John, thanks again. It was a great time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Legacy Leaders Podcast with Katie Beth Hand and Stan Miller. For more information on them and the show, please visit pinnaclelegacylaw.com. If you like what you've learned today, do share the program with your friends and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.